Belle and Sebastian, late developers, album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new album from Scottish indie pop icons, Belle and Sebastian. If you are into indie pop of any generation, you know who Belle and Sebastian are, and for good reason. If you listen to anything between Tiger Milk, if you're feeling Sinister, The Boy with the Arab Strap, you're going to come away with some really great feelings. And you know, it deserves all the accolades it has gotten over the years, especially in my book. Hell, there was a long period of time in high school with those three albums where I felt like Stuart Murdoch understood me better than I understood myself. But like many others, when it comes to the 2000s and, you know, the different styles of music the band approached, the slightly different lineup changes that we got over the years, as well as just the quality of the music they were putting out, things kind of got a little back and forth with me for Belle and Sebastian, and that's not saying that they haven't put out great records. I mean, for every underrated gem like Dear Catastrophe Waitress, and honestly, one of my all-time favorite Belle and Sebastian records, The Life Pursuit, there's an album like Storytelling, or the really kind of middle of the road, painfully so, Right About Love. And don't get me started on some of their later dancier records. I don't need any more haters on this channel, and my thoughts on the albums haven't changed much. Now, the last time that we heard from them was only a few months ago, last year, with a bit of Previous, with an album that I thought was honestly one of the weaker in their catalog. I know a lot of people actually really liked this thing, but a lot of this album just felt lifeless to me. Belle and Sebastian sounded to me like a shell of their former selves, trying to get back to their glory days but falling flat on their face. Not to say that there weren't good tracks on there. There were quite a few, like Unnecessary Drama, which ended up being one of my top 20 singles of the year last year. I still think it's great. So it's not like Stewart and the gang can't put out great music still. I'm just shocked that we're hearing from them this soon, and not only this soon, with such a quick turnaround. They only really announced this album was coming out about a week and a half ago, and leading up to this album, they dropped a single, and I thought it was honestly pretty piss poor. I was not into it. It almost made me turn away from this album completely. Thankfully, though, I think this album's not that bad, especially it's not nearly as bad as their last album. As a matter of fact, the first half of this album is really solid. This album starts off with Juliet naked, and right off the bat, it's a big yes from me. Hell, I would take this one track over 90% of their last album, and probably their last two albums before that. I love how reserved and, I don't know, how timid this track comes off. This to me sounds like a very tasteful throwback for the band. A real, back to basics, but like in the right way approach. This to me sounds like a modern Belle and Sebastian sound that could very well work, and it does. Lyrically, it's beautiful, it's equal parts charming and refined and sweet, and it just makes me very happy to hear. All with that slight timid nature that they've been known for since day one. On the other hand, we have Give a Little Time, which is a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more airy, definitely a little bit more carefree as well. I love the riff on this track, and the backing vocals are a really nice touch. I love this. It's really sweet, and while it's nothing wildly new from the band, it reminds me very quickly that, their formula isn't stale, and when they focus, they can pull out a really great track like this. Now, the more synthetic side to the band has always been a very hot debate, which brings me to When We Were Very Young. Honestly, though, this is probably one of the better, more synthetic sounding tracks from the band, mostly due to Stuart Murdoch's performance here. I think it's one of his best on the entire album. It's just so sweet and just down to earth, and I love how haunting this track is. Like, this melody just is very haunting. It sticks with you. It's also very downtrodden and very catchy, but if you're a Belle and Sebastian fan, then you know that that's kind of par for the course. And if you are looking for a true blue Belle and Sebastian throwback in every single way, look no further than Will I Tell You a Secret. This track is an absolutely adorable, stripped down, classy little chamber pop tune. It's short, it's sweet, it doesn't overstay its welcome, but it does everything effectively. And personally, at this point in the album, I needed a little bit of oomph. I needed a little bit of energy, and we get that with So in this moment. It's one of my favorite tracks here. I mean, it's not heavy by any means, but it just got a little pep to it. It's got a little energy, and I salute that. It's much more driven, upbeat, and easily the catchiest track here. It reminds me a little bit of what I liked so much about Unnecessary Drama last year. But it's the moments like this with modern Belle and Sebastian that I end up appreciating the most. They take all of their classic elements that made them such a driving force in the genre for years, bring them up to speed a little bit, and just have some fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. I salute that. And the Evening Star is classy as all hell. It's sweet on the ears, it's super elegant. We get some of Stewart's lower vocals, which you don't hear too much, but they come off really nice. Now, you gotta go into like tracks like this, just realizing you're not going to get completely the classic Belle and Sebastian sound. This is far from the very shy, timid, quiet chamber pop that got them off to the races to begin with. This is a much more lavish Baroque pop, if anything. But it's just as heartfelt, just as sweet on the ears, and just as easy to take in. But then we get to When You're Not With Me, and I start to run out of excuses really quickly. The moment that I heard this snappy riff, this funky bass, these horns, I kind of had my reservations, and as the track rolled on, they were kind of right. Adding a little oomph is one thing, but this just sounds like Belle and Sebastian putting on a mask and trying out something that just does not work for them. Did I mention this track is by far the longest track here? I mean, it's upbeat and groovy, sure, but this is where I draw the line. Then we get to I Don't Know What You See in Me. This was the one single that was dropped from this album about a week and a half before it was released, and I don't know who asked for a big 80s sized synth driven ballad from Belle and Sebastian, but it wasn't me. And if you know anything about me and this channel, I would usually kill for that on an album right now. But I am mortified that this is Belle and Sebastian, and I am mortified that this track exists. How in the world could this happen? And that final chorus, la dee dees and la dee das and all, is infuriating. I genuinely think it's the worst track here and should not exist. Yeah, Belle and Sebastian sadly do not stick the landing on this album. Then we get to Do You Follow, and for a band that has a deep catalog of just tender, sweet, light, and fluffy ballads that speak to your heart, this track is just way too light and fluffy for me. This track is over 4 minutes long. Over 4 minutes, and I couldn't tell you the first thing about it. It just blows right by, doesn't leave any impression on me, and it's honestly what I thought we'd hear for most of this album. And when the cynics stare back from the wall, by the time we get to this track, Belle and Sebastian sound exhausted. This sounds like any track off of like their last 4 albums where they kind of got deep into a new sound and tried to reel it back just a little bit but just fell on their face. That's what we're getting here. It's just so middle of the road, so unbelievably just fine. It's fine. Like, I can tell you this, if you've never heard Belle and Sebastian's classics and this track came on, you probably would love this. But for me, this track is just way too middle of the road. There's so much better material, especially on this album. And Late Developers as a finale, I do like it, but it's certainly a different kind of tune. I mean, it's pleasant on the ears, and it's certainly more likable than what the band has been doing in the rest of the second half of this release. But it's got a lot of elements I didn't expect. It's sunny, it's got these big warm rhythms and a horn section, and these are things that I'm just not accustomed to hearing when it comes to Belle and Sebastian. And honestly, I don't hate it, even though this is the closest thing Belle and Sebastian has ever gotten to dad rock, if you will. It's actually not that bad. It's actually pretty warm and endearing. Don't hate me for liking it. Overall, sadly, I don't think Belle and Sebastian stick the landing at the end of the day, because the material that we get in the second half, you know, while the good definitely outweighs the bad here, the bad is really awful and really hard to sit through and nauseating at times. I Don't Know What You See in Me is going to haunt me the rest of this year. That being said, Belle and Sebastian, for most of this album, actually pull out some really great tracks, especially when you look at where they were just last year. I think this album is a lot better than that. I wish I could give it a little bit higher of a score, but the bad tracks here, man, are really, really rough to sit through. So for now, I'm feeling a very strong 6 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.